My life be like, yeah. My life be like, yeah.
Hello everybody and welcome to Smithy's Lifestyle. Please like and subscribe for continued content. So today we're going to look at a brand new rule that is being brought in by Bisfed World Boccia, and it's licensing, ball licensing. I've been looking online. I've noticed that there has been a petition launched, and I've read through the petition, and I have to say I pretty much agree with everything that has been said in that petition. So I've signed it, and I would encourage anybody to have a look on change.org at Stop the Ball Licensing. And yeah, I would definitely encourage people to read that and sign it if they wish, if they feel strongly about it. So I thought I would today go through a little bit of the history of Boccia in terms of this rule, because there's quite a lot of context to go into before we get to this point, and I thought I would explain how it affects me, this rule, so why I voted for the petition, and also how it could potentially affect people in my classification, who I feel could be disproportionately affected by this. So yeah, it's quite a big issue at the moment within our sport, and I think it would be good to get some sort of balanced view, so I'm happy to try and do that. So let's start at the beginning. So Boccia, for those who don't know, is a bowls type sport for people with severe physical disabilities. We've been in the Paralympics since 1984, I believe, and since 1996, Boccia balls have been personalised. So as an athlete, you could purchase your own set of Boccia balls and train with them, and then take them to competition. Before that point, it was competition sets. Now, to start with, that was fine at the beginning, but the issue with it when you've got was that people were finding that they couldn't train. Like, it was impossible for people to practice a sport when you don't have the equipment to practice with. And it's not like a tennis ball. Like, every ball is quite different. They don't come out the box perfectly round. It takes quite a few years to get them. We call it worn in, and so the standard of play in those early years was not great and not a particularly good spectator sport. But obviously the last couple of years the standard has gone through the roof. People have really evolved the game, and we believe it's a lot better spectacle now than it ever has been to watch. But with everything, I guess, sometimes the innovation overtakes the rules that are in place. So we had a fairly basic testing procedure up until Rio, really, and that was serving a purpose. But people started finding loopholes in it, and we were finding players with balls that were sliding, for example. So they were almost acting like curling stones, which made them almost impossible to play against if you were playing with normal balls. And then you had balls that were really, really soft, which made it impossible for people to move, and basically made the game obsolete. Essentially, you could win the game with one shot and the opponent wouldn't have a chance to do anything about it, which obviously we don't want. We want it to be competitive all the way through to the end of the end. So for me, I've never had the strength to be able to throw ridiculously soft balls anyway, but I never went down that route. I always tried and played the game how it was supposed to be played. The balls that I use, I've never done anything to them. I've never sort of changed what's inside it or tried to make them softer than necessary. It's always been, for me, it's been about wearing them in to a point where they are within my range of power. So when I first started, I would get them to a point where they were soft enough that I could just about reach the back of the court with them if I was throwing at full power, and that would give me a decent control over them across the rest of the court. Obviously now I've got a lot more power than I had, so now that would be impossible now. They would have to be really, really soft for me to be able to do that. So I don't bother anymore. I just keep them to pretty much the same softness as they've been since I've had them, probably 8 years, and they're probably about the same as they were. So my very softest balls are no softer than they were at the, back in the day. However, I know I'm not, I'm a fairly rare example. I know people do like to soften them out a bit, and the advantages of having really soft balls are that they roll straighter, they're a lot easier to control, and obviously they're harder to move when they stick on a target. So obviously it's a competitive advantage to have softer balls. Bisfed did their best to try and get rid of this by incorporating what we call a drop test, which was basically a wooden spoon mounted on a plinth that lifted the ball a certain height off the floor, and then the spoon dropped the ball straight down, and you then judged how much the ball expanded by lifting up some circles, and if the balls didn't pass through the circles, then they failed. However, that test only outlawed balls that were at a certain diameter, I would say, and actually got rid of more hard balls and soft. And so all you needed to do was get a soft ball with a small diameter, and you were fine. So that test didn't work, and thankfully they got rid of it after Rio. But it felt like at that point, World Boccia and Bisfed were doing it because they needed to do something. Like they felt like they were needed to do something, and so they just rushed through this procedure, and it just really didn't work. So yeah, we kind of took a step back, and eventually they came up with a thing called a roll test, which we use now, which is a very simple device. The ball starts at the top, you let it go, and it rolls to the bottom, and it has to roll off the end for it to pass. Very simple, very logical, and it works. Ironically enough, I came out with that idea about 6 years before they invented it, but that's okay. I'm glad they caught up with my ingenuity. And I never got credit for it, but no, it's fine. But actually, that test works really well, and I think the majority of the athletes that I've spoken to think that test does a good job in terms of stopping the really soft balls coming in, and I think it has to a point. Now we're getting to the stage where it's probably time to extend that again, make that particular test a little bit more difficult to pass by making it a little bit longer or something, just so that the balls have to be slightly harder to pass. A bit like in Formula 1, where they changed the rules slightly to make the cars slightly slower around the track, and then obviously engineers have to try and go away and find a way of making the best of it. And I think that would be a good way of doing it. But we somehow are not doing that, and currently Bisfed are looking at trying to incorporate this new licensing rule. Now, the licensing rule is very good in principle, because what it's supposed to try and do is to help, is to stop balls that are unable to be purchased by anybody, like stop people making their own balls and then bringing them to the circuit, and to stop balls that no one else has got any chance of getting hold of. So obviously it keeps a level playing field. That's the idea behind it. What it doesn't do is it doesn't stop people changing the properties of the ball after the balls have been purchased, and it, like I said, balls naturally change over time anyway. Like I said, wearing in is a process of literally just throwing the balls a lot often against the wall or a floor, or running them over or something, and just to soften them up a little bit. And again, that's not manipulating the ball at all. That's just wear and tear, and the ball softens up gradually over time, and then it becomes a lot easier to use and a lot more accurate, which is more importantly, and easier to grip. So that comes to my point about the BC1s. But this new rule would outlaw all the balls that are currently in circulation around the world, so God knows how many that is, because they don't have this new stamp. But again, a lot of these balls are perfectly valid, perfectly legal. Like, I have probably 2.5, 3 sets of balls which are all perfectly legal, would fly off the roll test, pass all the other criteria, no problem. Some are even pretty much brand new, and again, never been used, and again, they would automatically be outlawed overnight. And these balls you can purchase, these balls aren't anything special. I just got them from the manufacturers that there are around the circuit. So for me, the stamping thing just totally obviously throws out all of them. And obviously for me, I'm in a privileged position. Doesn't bother me really. I can get myself 4 new sets of balls and come up with a set. I think a lot of people misunderstand. I know the head of top of Bisfed don't seem to realise that actually it's not. You don't just buy one set and then you stick with it. Like most players use a mixed set, so different types of balls because they all do slightly different things. Slightly different textures and they behave slightly differently on the floor. So it makes sense to use different balls for different jobs, a bit like a golfer with different clubs. So that's going to be the case. People are going to have to spend a lot of money on these different types of balls, and obviously for the high-funded countries like us, we're going to be fine because we've got the money, we can afford to do it, no problem. But obviously, going in the future, we're trying to open the sport to other countries. They're all going to have to spend a lot of money on these brand new balls, even though they, and they might not even have any idea of what balls to get or why. So they're going to be at even more of a disadvantage. So, and then going back to my disability, I think I'm probably going to be one of the people that benefit most from this rule change because I have a disability that's fairly stable. Like I don't have aphatouide CP, I don't shake, so I've got really good pace control. I can pretty much throw any ball and be at a fairly good standard. Now I know for a fact that that's not the case for a lot of people that I play against. Like it takes them years to actually get themselves used to the type of ball that they're playing with and the grip and all that sort of stuff. And you're basically just, throwing these guys up in the air and seeing where they land. And essentially, people like me are going to really benefit from this. Not that I need any help, because I'm already at the top of my sport. And it just seems to me it just takes away any sense of equality or that competitiveness within the game. And it's just a shame really. And that's why I signed a petition, because I don't see it as I don't think it's gonna make the sport any better. I think the standard of the game is gonna reduce. I think a lot of BC1s are gonna find it really difficult to adjust because of how long it's taken them to get to where they are with the balls they have. And so, I'm totally against it. And also the amount of money they're gonna have to spend to find balls that they can work with. Because like I said, it's not just a case of any ball will do. It's not like a tennis ball where they're a standard and you're hitting it with a tennis racket. You're expecting these balls to roll a bit and stop at a precise location. With tennis, you're kind of hitting it across the net and you're hitting it as far as you can. It doesn't matter where the ball doesn't stop as such, or it doesn't matter where it rolls really. It's just as long as it comes off the tennis racket in the right sort of way. So it's a different requirement, I guess. And it's so hard to manufacture these balls to a standard level. I mean, from a set of balls, you'd be lucky to get 2 or 3 balls that are any good. And you have to kind of mix and match and try and find any that will go in a straight line. And it just becomes impossible really. And so we're all a bit disappointed by this rule change. I think majorly because most of the athletes that I've spoken to don't agree with it. I think there are serious questions to be asked about how the governing body speaks to athletes and how we bring about these rule changes, because no one's going to deny that there is an issue and we do need to figure out ways of making of having balls that everybody can purchase and having balls that make sure that the game is fair across the board. But I think we're, at the moment with this new rule, we're kind of throwing out the baby with the bathwater. And I think it throws up more issues than it actually solves, which is not great. And I think we don't have a procedure in place to be able to monitor it or even sort of properly enforce it. So you could end up with a situation where, the stamps that are going to be used, they could be copied by other countries. And put on any random ball, and then and how do you enforce that? How do you police that? So again, a lot of these issues haven't been addressed yet, but the rules being brought in anyway, and that's quite concerning. I think it feels to me like a bit like before Rio when they brought the drop test in. It feels like this is like a reactionary rule rather than a proactive thing. So and obviously with the pandemic and stuff, we're in a situation where a lot of countries are struggling at the moment, and I think this just makes it harder for everybody to get back into boccia once lockdown finishes, once COVID's opened up. I mean, the first competition we're going to get back is Tokyo now, because all the competitions have been postponed. So the first competition we get back is the Paralympics, and then straight after that we got this massive rule change. And it just feels bad timing. It just doesn't feel like the right time to be doing this sort of change, and I worry about how inclusive it is for people. I worry about my classification and the number of players in my class that are going to struggle with it. And yeah, we just want fair, competitive boccia of a good standard. We don't want it to be we don't want it to be fair but rubbish. Like, we don't want it to be a mess, balls all over the place, a bit, with the jack somewhere in the middle of the court and you've got balls left, right and centre, nowhere near, because the balls don't go straight. That's not a spectacle. That's not going to be good for anybody. But it could happen, even with the equipment and even with the amount of training we've got. That sort of level could happen, and it just doesn't look good for the sport. So, we're as professionals, we want to make sure that our sport is still exciting to watch, and still enjoyable to play as well. And yeah, so that's kind of where I think the petition is going, and that's why I signed it. And I would encourage anybody to read the petition and sign it as well. If you've got any thoughts about this new rule and anything like that, feel free to comment. Feel free to get in touch. I think, like I said, I think most of us are in agreement with this, that it's not good timing. It's not been very well thought out, and it just doesn't fit the purpose at the moment. I think if we can get some more athlete consultation through with Bisfed, I think that would help. I think at the moment we seem to have athlete reps, but they seem to have like a peripheral kind of role, without any sort of direct decision making. And also it's a very small sample of athletes, which doesn't help with discussions and stuff. And I think it's time that athletes took control of our sport, because at the end of the day, we're the ones that play it, and we're the ones, without us, you wouldn't have a sport. So I think, I think it's time that athletes sort of started taking, we've got to stop sort of being passive and letting other people run the sport, and hope that they make the right decisions. Sometimes, if you want something done properly, you've got to do it yourself. So I think it's time that the athletes sort of take a step forward and just, come on, we're here, we're willing to talk, we're willing to dialogue, we're open to change, but this isn't the way to do it, and can we do it in a different way? That's kind of my thoughts behind it. So anyway, bit of a rant, a bit of a dialogue. I haven't bored you too much, but send comments, send them to me, and I hope you all have a great day. Again, I must acknowledge that Bisfed have done a really good job. This isn't necessarily one of those examples, but Bisfed overall and World Boccia have done a really great job in bringing up the profile of the sport. We've done thousands of different things, new competitions, new structures. They've really brought it up to the masses. So this isn't a dig at you guys. I really do appreciate what you guys have done. I just don't think this rule kind of matches that ethos. So that's my 3 pence worth. Lots of respect to you all. Again, stay safe. Looking forward to seeing you soon and compete competitively again. And yeah, let's get this sorted, and let's make sure that Paris 2024 is as exciting as Tokyo 2020, with or without the rule changes.